Every single year, there are certain players who can completely break fantasy football. These are typically the players that no one sees coming, but if you can identify these players early, you're in a great spot. So in this video, I'm going to break down 5 players who are set to shock the world and shock your fantasy leagues this year, whether you've already drafted or not. And if you're not familiar, I'm Sal Vetri. I've been helping people win their leagues for nearly 8 years, and I plan to do the same for you in this video. And we'll start with Jaylen Warren, the Pittsburgh Steelers running back, former undrafted running back, by the way, the 26-year-old back. Look, this is a guy who last year, when you look at his game logs, right, he was splitting a backfield with Najee Harris. You look at the game logs for Jaylen Warren, not that great. He had a lot of expectations last year, and he only was able to total 8 carries per game and 3.2 targets per game. So you're getting about 11 opportunities per game. He only scored 1 touchdown. When you come here and you look up, if we look on Player Profiler, where Jaylen Warren last season finished in fantasy points per game, he was the RB 39 in fantasy points per game. That's not great, especially after the previous year being a top 30 back and somebody that heading into the 2024 fantasy season last year was a very trendy pick. This was a guy in those later rounds of the drafts that everybody was targeting as the next breakout running back, but there was one big issue. Sadly, Jaylen Warren dealt with injuries last year, and it happened early and often for him, which will often, especially at that running back position, derail your season. You can see right here, in terms of the injury history on Player Profiler, in the preseason, Warren suffers a hamstring strain. And here's the deal. Hamstring strains in the preseason, these things are common. Players are getting back into training camp. They're getting back into sprinting at nearly 100%. They're playing games. They're having inter-squad scrimmages. They're going to get these hamstring strains. And for the most part, these strains don't hurt that much. A lot of the time, they'll be mild and only be 1 to 2 weeks. But there's times where you might be rushed back too early. And if that's the case, it can lead to more injuries. And that's what happened in week 4 with Jaylen Warren. He then ended up having a pretty medium to high severity knee strain. That knee strain kept him on the injury report for about 3 to 4 weeks. So this was the issue. The hamstring strain in the preseason kind of wasn't 100% healed, led to a knee injury during the season. But then he was able to come back towards the end of the year. And if we look at his final 7 games of the season, Jaylen Warren, right? He dealt with injury those first 8 games. He was averaging about 10 fantasy points per game. But the interesting thing here, between his receiving and rushing yards, he was averaging about 65 yards per game. Now, 65 yards per game isn't going to blow anybody's socks off, but when he was the RB2 in this backfield and Najee Harris was seeing 300 touches, that's a little bit more impressive. He was doing this on like less than 50% of the snaps, averaging over 65 yards a game. And the reason he was able to do this on a per touch basis, average 5 to 6 yards per touch, is because that's just what Jaylen Warren does. Since he's entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent, all he has done is be efficient per touch. And you can see that right here based on Jacob Gibbs' tweet over on Twitter. He says Jaylen Warren, since entering the NFL, RB6 in yards per rush attempt, so he's number 6 overall during that time. He's RB4 in success rate, number 1 in avoided tackle rate, number 7 in terms of receiving in yards per route run, and 3rd in first downs per route run. So when it comes to efficiency metrics for running backs across both rushing and also receiving, he's basically been a top 8, at worst, top 10 back in efficiency since entering the league. And this is exactly why every year he's been like this late round target, including last year, but due to the injuries and being a letdown last season, it's not really happening as much this year. There's a new 3rd round rookie that we'll talk about that's getting more hype, but there is reason to be liking Jaylen Warren because when this guy gets opportunities and he's healthy, all he does is produce. And if you look at it back in 2023, his last healthy season, among running backs with at least 100 plus touches on Twitter, according to Joe Orrico, 3rd in running backs yards before contact, 1st in broken tackle rate, 1st in elusive rate, 5th in receptions. Now he's coming into a backfield where there's over 300 opportunities up for grab because Najee Harris is now gone. And the players that are going to replace that, sure, they're there, but neither of them are like proven veterans. And let's look at those additions to the backfield on the team changes tracker in my fantasy blueprint. You can check it out at jointheblueprint.com. In free agency, the only running back added here was Kenneth Gainwell. And in the draft, the big pick here was Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. They didn't have a 2nd round pick. That's what they spent to go out and get DK Metcalf. So you have 2 new running backs in this backfield, right? So it's not like it's going to just be Jaylen Warren. You have Kenneth Gainwell, who's actually been starting the first couple of preseason games while Warren was resting, ahead of Caleb Johnson, the workhorse running back with 1,600 yards last year at Iowa, the guy that in terms of like a breakout player is a candidate this year as a rookie for many people, but it's leaving Jaylen Warren to fall oftentimes into like round 8, 9, or 10 of fantasy drafts, and that is way too late for the guy who probably week 1 is going to be seeing 14 to 15 plus touches in this offense. Because as you can see from my tweet here, this is one of the graphics that I put together, Caleb Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell played ahead of him in the first 2 preseason games, and then he played into the 3rd quarter of the preseason game, Caleb Johnson. Now, a lot of people, some of you watching this will say, preseason games don't matter. They do matter. Now, there is, of course, context. You could just say this is a rookie running back that they wanted to see him get some more usage, and that's why they let him play into the 3rd quarter. I understand that, but if you actually believe that he's going to be the workhorse running back for this team, you don't let him play into the 3rd quarter of a preseason game when he could potentially get injured and let him see like 20 plus touches in the preseason so far. If he was that valuable to your offense, a workhorse back that we would expect 20 plus touches or bare minimum 14 to 15 plus touches a game, probably not going to play that deep into the preseason. So there is a little bit of a concern there from that standpoint. All of these things are indicators for Jaylen Warren, who sat out the first 2 preseason games, that he's probably going to see a bigger role than people expect. And there's also the fact that there's a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers who is not mobile at all, does not want to take hits anymore back there. And when it comes to just rookies and guys like Kenneth Gainwell, who are a little bit shaky in pass protection, Aaron Rodgers is going to trust a veteran way more. Now, it's not like Jaylen Warren is a 230-pound running back. He is a smaller running back, but when it comes to just trusting a veteran, both in the passing game as a pass protector, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to trust you more if you're Jaylen Warren with years of experience compared to a guy like Caleb Johnson, at least for the beginning parts of the season. And he's going to have a decent amount of say as the 42-year-old quarterback on this team, many of times MVP, former future Hall of Famer. I think Rodgers, it's kind of known at this point that when it comes to rookies, especially pass protection, he's a little bit weary there. It's also known that Aaron Rodgers is going to be targeting the running back position. Just look at last year with Breece Hall, right? Like if we pull this down, last year with Breece Hall obviously wasn't the season that many people wanted, but if you look at Aaron Rodgers, peppered the running back position. 3rd most targets amongst running backs, Breece Hall last year with 76, nearly 5 targets per game. Heck, you could even pull this back to when Aaron Rodgers was on the Packers and Aaron Jones was top 10 in receptions and targets at the running back position for 4 straight seasons. Aaron Rodgers is going to be targeting Jaylen Warren, as long as Warren's healthy and on the field, a lot this year. And just a reminder, as those stats we showed you earlier, Jaylen Warren's one of the best pass-catching running backs in the NFL efficiency-wise on a per route, on a per-touch basis. Now, the other piece of this is that he also plays in a run-heavy offense in Pittsburgh, which is if you're a run-heavy offense and Jaylen Warren could see 12 to 14 carries a game, that's great. Now, just check this out. The Steelers have been top 10 in rush attempts every single year since 2022 and ranked 4th in rush attempts last year. Now, here's the big thing about this. If we look at where Jaylen Warren currently goes in drafts, oftentimes as a 7th or 8th round fantasy pick, he's going after guys like Brian Robinson, after guys like Jordan Addison. I would much rather have Jaylen Warren. Obviously, it depends on the build that you're currently going for, but I think there's a lot of upside here as he currently goes as the RB31. This is a player that if you already have your hero RB, maybe you drafted a Saquon Barkley, a Christian McCaffrey in round 1 of your draft, and then you just load up on other positions, and in round like 7 or 8, you want to take your RB2 and Jaylen Warren, pretty solid build. Now, the next player who can absolutely shock the world this year is Travis Hunter, because, I mean, look, this guy already, and look, he's one of the most proven wide receivers we've seen coming out of the draft, and he's not even like a true wide receiver. In college, he was in all the defensive meetings, not the wide receiver in offensive meetings, and this guy is still the best wide receiver in this draft class, which is crazy. I mean, he was playing 150 snaps per game, winning the Heisman and the Biletnikoff Award, which means you're the best wide receiver in the country. Doing both of those things is nuts. And if we look at Matt Harmon's reception perception right here about Travis Hunter, you could just see how good he was. Matt Harmon calls him one of the best prospects he's ever seen, very unique. 92nd percentile success against man, that's elite. 97th percentile against both zone and press coverage. All of these things are elite. This led to a strong year last year at Colorado. 96 catches, over 1,200 yards. 15 touchdown receptions. Again, the dude was playing 150 snaps a game, which is a part of the reason why, and a lot of the reason why really, the Jaguars traded up the farm basically to go up to pick number 2 and take Travis Hunter. And he's stepping into a pretty solid situation. You have Brian Thomas, the 1st round pick last year for the Jaguars, who popped off, ranked 3rd in the NFL in receiving yards, not just amongst rookies, overall in receiving yards as a rookie last year, despite playing with like Mac Jones for nearly half his games down the stretch. And then that's going to be a big piece of competition for sure. The other piece of competition will be Diami Brown, obviously not a major piece of competition. And what we're seeing right now based on camp reports and preseason usage is that Travis Hunter has been the motion guy in this offense. He's been the guy being motioned into the slot. He's been the guy moving around, the guy that they're going to be creating some swing passes to. Like, this is the guy. Brian Thomas is obviously going to have a great year. We saw it last year. Now they're going to get a healthy Trevor Lawrence. But if we're talking about the guy that can actually be put in and schemed around, it's going to be Travis Hunter. I think this is going to be the guy who plays out of the slot a lot, gets a lot of yards after the catch opportunities, because we saw that elite ability in college from him, as well as combining those easy gimme looks with the downfield usage. Now, I mentioned that Trevor Lawrence is going to be back, and we hope that he could stay healthy this year, because we haven't seen a fully healthy Trevor Lawrence until the early parts of 2023. And if you just go all the way back to 2022, because later on in 2023, Lawrence was also banged up as well. So if you wanted to just go back to the last time we saw a fully healthy Trevor Lawrence for a season, right? All the way back in 2022, when he throws for 4,100 yards, completes 66% of his passes in that year. He had 25 touchdowns, like played every single game as well. This is a guy that if we can get back to that with an improved offense, we're hoping it's improved from the offensive line play. We'll see what happens there, but we know, at least from a play calling perspective, this offense should definitely be improved with Liam Coen coming in from the Bucs, who orchestrated a top 10 offense last year. And not only is Liam Coen coming in, like, this is a guy who, if we're saying that Travis Hunter has been used in the slot a lot, he's being motioned a lot, and you just look at what Liam Coen has done with those types of players in the past who arguably weren't even as talented as a Travis Hunter. Let's just look at it right here. Back in college in 2021, Wan'Dale Robinson was this type of player for him, and he averaged 103 yards per game at Kentucky with Liam Coen. In 2022, Cooper Cooper Kupp was put into that role, averaged 11.4 fantasy points per game just out of the slot. Obviously, he averaged more than that when you factor in his outside snaps. 2024, Chris Godwin, before injury last year, was averaging 14.3 fantasy points per game from the slot alone. Again, this is not even factoring the points that these guys were getting on the outside. Now, I mentioned Travis Hunter being the most talented out of that bunch. Obviously, a ton of talented receivers here with Cooper Kupp and Chris Godwin, but just based on pure talent and explosiveness, yes, I would say out of these guys, Travis Hunter is way more explosive than a Cooper Kupp, way more explosive than the post-injury Chris Godwin. I'm talking about the knee, not the ankle before 2024. So now you're going to put Travis Hunter into that role, which has just been a proven fantasy goldmine in this Liam Cohen offense. That feels amazing. Here's just another piece of what you can see from that in terms of the new coach here. Liam Cohen had 3 players ranked top 12 in screen targets per game last year. Those 3 players were Chris Godwin, Rachaad White, and Bucky Irving. They all ranked highly in yards after the catch per reception on those targets, which just tells you that 1, those players are good, and 2, the coach was putting them in a good situation to produce after the catch. Now you're going to put an elite talent and playmaker in Travis Hunter into that role where you're going to get gimme looks and yards after the catch abilities. It's going to be fantastic this year for Travis Hunter, who you can still get in the somewhat middle rounds to later rounds of your draft. So I'm very much interested in Travis Hunter when I can land him in like that round 5 or 6 right now. If he's going to be a guy who gets to Cooper Kupp or Chris Godwin usage or just anything near that, he's definitely worth his ADP. And this becomes even more evident when you just look at there's so much opportunity up for grabs. We already saw last year that Brian Thomas had a ton of upside in that offense for the Jaguars, a top 10 receiver, top 5 receiver down the stretch. And now heading into this year, there's no more Evan Ingram, there's no more Christian Kirk, there's a ton of targets up for grab. We're talking about 150 plus targets up for grabs this year. Obviously, Brian Thomas is going to see some of those. Obviously, Dyami Brown, as you can see here, the newcomer in 3 wide receiver sets from the Commanders, is going to see some of those. But a lot of those targets, maybe 120 plus, are going to go to Travis Hunter. And if you're concerned that he's going to play too much defense this year, as you can see a very recent tweet from Josh Norris, this is a quote that we saw coming out of Jaguars camp. Travis Hunter will be the 2-way star they intend him to be this year. Full-time on offense, though, ease in on defense, and earn more reps as the season goes on. The big thing here, full-time on offense is what the beat reporters are saying. That's what we've been basically seeing all throughout camp right now. Sure, one game he played more defensive snaps in the preseason or in terms of just kind of camp practices. But by all accounts, he's probably going to run 75 to 80% of the routes on offense this year, and that's all you need based on where he's currently going in drafts for him to pay off in a major way. Because Travis Hunter is currently going in drafts, and this feels kind of crazy, as a late 6th, early 7th round pick in fantasy drafts. In terms of the upside that this guy has, healthy Trevor Lawrence, wide receiver 2 because the attention should be going to Brian Thomas, going to be moved around the formation with Liam Cohen. Checks a ton of boxes right now. If Trevor Lawrence stays healthy, easily paying off a late 6th round draft price. Now, if you want to see where I have Travis Hunter ranked in my top 50 overall rankings, you can check them out completely free, link down below, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. That will take you to this page where you enter your email, and I will send you in a few minutes after that my top 50 overall rankings. Be sure just to check your spam and promotional folders, especially the promotional folders. If you're using Google, we've seen that they go there a lot. That sends you my top 50 rankings, tiered out, and then highlighted in green and red for the best and worst values in each round. But if you're watching this right now, odds are you have a fantasy draft very soon. So if you want my full top 250 rankings to help you with your entire draft, all my other drafting tools, and my in-season tools from draft day to championship week, you can check out the Fantasy Blueprint. That's why I built it. It's what I use in every single one of my leagues, and over 10,000 people are currently using in their leagues. You can learn more about the Fantasy Blueprint, link down below. It will take you to this page, or you can just type in jointheblueprint.com. That is jointheblueprint.com. There's also going to be a bunch of testimonials on here from people who used the Blueprint last year and are back this year, because almost 9 out of 10 people, nearly 90% of people who got the Blueprint last year are back this year. I think that's the best stat just to show you that it's a valuable product. 9 out of 10 people said I had it last year and it was good. I'm back again. So if you want to schmack around your friends this year in your fantasy league, even if you already had your draft, this will help you in season from week 1 to championship week. Well, check out the Fantasy Blueprint. It's linked down below, or you can head to jointheblueprint.com. It'll make your friends wonder, how did this guy get so good at fantasy overnight? Now, the next guy, and oh my God, this is my favorite late round pick, I think, in drafts all right now. I'm so happy I got him in the Flock League in double-digit rounds, especially for a sharper league like that. This guy, Rashid Shaheed, he's a guy who can just break out at any point. He was breaking out last year before injury in what was one of the worst offenses after those first 2 weeks of the season, turned into one of the worst offenses in the league. Derek Carr banged up, offensive line issues, right? Rashid Shaheed is that dude when healthy. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Over his first 5 games before he got injured in that 6th game, Rashid Shaheed was averaging 14.7 fantasy points per game, nearly 7 targets per game, and 68 yards per game. He was a top 20 fantasy producer during this time, and then you look at some of his advanced numbers last year, very strong. A 25% target share is very strong. You scroll down, seeing 50% of his team's air yards. That will probably change this year with a new offense. We'll get into that with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator calling plays, but that was number one in the NFL. Let's scroll down a little bit more here in terms of the downfield usage we were seeing. Oh yeah, 2.7 deep targets, nearly 3 targets of 20 plus yards per game downfield. Absolute cheat code. This dude had 16 deep targets through just 5 completed starts is insane. And despite having all those deep targets and having a lot of looks downfield, he still caught 20 of his 21 catchable passes, a 95% catch rate. He has reliable hands. If you were to pace out his first 5 games to show you what he would have done over the course of the season last year, over 17 games, he was tracking for 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns, which is legitimate wide receiver too. We're talking top 24 wide receiver production in fantasy, and now he goes outside of like the top 14 rounds in drafts. And now you fast forward to this year where he's healthy. He's been healthy for months now. He has a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who based on the preseason usage that we're seeing, is probably going to be putting Rashid Shaheed in very favorable situations. Here's a tweet from Jared Smola on Twitter. Be sure to follow him. That just breaks that down. Rashid Shaheed played 39% of his snaps out of the slot in yesterday's preseason game. This was for week 2, compared to just 25% of the snaps out of the slot last year. So more slot work and more short targets in the Kellen Moore's offense would be good news for Shaheed week to week. Basically, Kellen Moore put him in the slot in this usage in the preseason, 50% more than he was in the slot last year. And if you're talking about a very fast player, a great yards per route run, great after the catch player in Rashid Shaheed, getting early underneath looks or easy underneath looks like we talked about with Travis Hunter, well, this is a guy who can quickly start to gain yards after the catch ability. And when you're getting more receptions, especially in half PPR and PPR formats, now you're not relying on these deep receptions downfield where you'll only have 4 or 5 catches in a game. Now you can get peppered and 5, 6, 7 catches start to become a reality. That's where Rashid Shaheed in the later rounds starts to become one of these breakout candidates. And yes, of course I know what you're going to say. Sal, the quarterback play is awful. The quarterback play is awful. Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, the quarterback play is awful. Although Spencer Rattler was thrown into the thick of things during last season when an offense was not built around him, right? Maybe that can change this year if he ends up being the starter. Tyler Shuck as well. As of this recording, a starter has not been named. I assume by the time you're watching this, one of these 2 guys will become the starter. If it's Jake Kaner, I'm very concerned. But every year we see these offenses where it's like, stay away from this quarterback, we're concerned. Like Sam Darnold, stay away from him. Years before that, I mean, Baker Mayfield a couple of years ago. Geno Smith a couple of years ago before his breakout year, right? And then you get a new offensive coordinator in. They build an offense around the quarterbacks out there, and it at least looks decent enough, right? It doesn't have to be great, but decent enough to pay off a 14th round draft price of Rashid Shaheed. And here's the other thing crazy about Rashid Shaheed. On DraftKings right now, the sportsbooks have his over-under at 700.5 receiving yards, which for a 14th round pick is easily the most. Most wide receivers that have an over-under of about 700 receiving yards and about 4 touchdowns, which is what his is right now, those guys are often going in like the 8th, 9th, at latest 10th round of fantasy drafts. You're getting a major discount on this dude because Rashid Shaheed currently goes as the 139th overall player, the wide receiver 55 in drafts, after 3rd string running backs on their team like Baishal Tutin, backups like Trey Benson, injured right now backups like Isaac Correndo dealing with an injury that's kept him out of camp for multiple weeks. I want Rashid Shaheed at this point because even if the offense, like right now everybody's expecting the Saints to be the dead last ranked offense with the dead last ranked quarterback play, and even at that point he's still too cheap. If they're just like 24th, 25th in offense, he's going to absolutely be worth it for you. And the same could be said about this next veteran running back. But before we get there, hit the subscribe button. We're pushing very close towards 200,000. It would mean the world to me. It just takes 2 seconds of your time. I appreciate you a ton. And that veteran running back is going to be Kenneth Walker, who this one absolutely blows my mind based on where he currently goes in like round 4 or 5 of fantasy drafts. This was a top 12 running back last year, averaging 16.5 fantasy points per game, despite missing time with injuries, leaving games early with injuries, which obviously skews his points per game when you're leaving a game early. But if you remove the game that he got hurt, he averaged 17.5 fantasy points per game last year, which puts him in the same tier of player as Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor, who oftentimes are going in the middle of second rounds of fantasy drafts right now. This dude was the workhorse. Despite Zach Charbonnet looking great when Kenneth Walker missed time, he came back and continued to be the workhorse. Kenneth Walker, top 12 in snap share, top 12 in opportunity share for his backfield as well. He handled 18 touches per game. He was also top 5 in targets per game, which was the biggest uptick last year. And what we saw in his role was the ability, for the first time ever, even dating back to his time in college, to show that he can catch passes. Because this is what we got out of him. Last year, Kenneth Walker ranked 6th, actually tied for 5th with Bucky Irving in design targets per game. This is when your offense is designing targets for the running back because you're a big piece of the offense. They put him up there with guys like Devon Achane, Alvin Kamara, Rashad White, Aaron Jones, proven pass-catching running backs in the NFL. Kenneth Walker was used in the same way in his offense, right? Now, obviously, there's a new offensive coordinator there this year with Clint Kubiak coming in from the Saints, but he's already said many times that he plans to keep Kenneth Walker in these types of situations because he saw good things last year. Or he's at least a alluded to that. I don't know if that was the exact quote. He's alluded to the fact, and we'll show you more on that in a second. Now, in terms of what Kenneth Walker did on the ground last year, more of what we already know. RB leaders in missed tackles forced per attempt, so basically just breaking tackles, missed tackles forced. Number one in the NFL was Kenneth Walker. This dude's been doing this all the way back since his time in college at Michigan State. He's an absolute beast when it comes to being a pure rusher, and then he added in last year that pass catching ability, which is exactly why last year, if you look at this, there were only 2 running backs who had 150 carries and gained more than 70% of the yards after contact. Number 1, Tank Bigsby. Number 2 was Kenneth Walker. Only 2 in the league to do that, which shows you that these dudes can break tackles and produce on their own. The upside for Kenneth Walker is that he's also the workhorse on his team when Tank Bigsby is splitting a backfield, and Walker, unlike Bigsby, showed that he can catch passes last year. If you look at what Kenneth Walker was doing before injury last year, these first 7 weeks of the season before he got banged up, 19 fantasy points per game, and that actually includes a game where he left early. Between his receiving and rushing yards, he was averaging nearly 90 yards per game. He was up there in the tier of guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Kyren Williams. He was up there as a top 10 running back last year when healthy, easily a top 10 running back. And in those 7 games, 6 times he was a top 15 running back, including one performance where he had like 30 plus points against the Detroit Lions. He was just consistent for you. And now arguably his situation is better. And I say arguably because of course Sam Darnold is now coming as the quarterback. So maybe if Darnold doesn't look as good now that he's out of Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, the whole offense could fall apart. But when you look at the situation here, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are now gone. So is Geno Smith. It's a whole new offense coming in with Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, MVS. JSN's going to come back this year, the wide receiver, but he's going to move to the outside based on preseason usage. The only guy basically staying in their exact same role. There's even new tight ends here with Noah Fant and Elijah Arroyo and AJ Bardner, right? Kenneth Walker's like the only guy in this offense who's going to remain in his similar role as he was last year as like a proven guy that they could rely on in this backfield. And if we pull back up the team changes tracker, what did they do in the first round? They got a guard in Greg Zabel because they want to run the ball more with Clint Kubiak, and Greg Zabel, by all accounts in the preseason, has looked great. As I mentioned with Clint Kubiak right now, a lot of things to like with him being the offensive coordinator, especially his history with running backs in terms of fantasy production. We've showed this tweet before, but as you can see from Bryce DeGrott right here on Twitter, in 2021 with the Minnesota Vikings, Dalvin Cook was the running back for Clint Kubiak, averaged 16 fantasy points per game, 22 touches per game. Last year with the Saints, it was Alvin Kamara, averaged 21 touches per game, 19 fantasy points per game. Clint Kubiak just produces top 12 running backs. He uses them as workhorse 3-down backs who also catch passes as well, and that's what it looks like right now Kenneth Walker is going to walk into. And you can see a quote right here from Clint Kubiak about Kenneth Walker. He basically says, like, I've seen Kenneth Walker do well in any scheme in football, and I've seen the guy catch the ball well out of the backfield, which I think is really important for our backs to utilize them. So what we're basically seeing here, and this is just one quote, you can see even more quotes. There's so many things that he says about Kenneth Walker, and then he'll say something nice about Zach Charbonnet. So many things he says nice about Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker is the clear workhorse here, and we don't have to worry about Charbonnet, assuming Walker is healthy for week 1. Charbonnet, no doubt about it. In my opinion, when he was coming out as a second-round pick, I thought he was great. UCLA, he was like this. He reminded me a lot of Amari and Hampton in terms of like the type of player, just a mega producer, also an athlete as well, a guy you can rely on for all 3 downs. Charbonnet can catch passes, right? Anytime Kenneth Walker's been out, Charbonnet's been like a top 12 fantasy back. But the problem is, as you can see right here, whenever Walker comes back in, he just commands the backfield again. Charbonnet has never seen more than 10 touches in a single game that Kenneth Walker played, not only last year, but in his 33-game entire career, according to Guru Fantasy World over on Twitter. Now, of course, there is a concern that Kenneth Walker has been dealing with a quote-unquote sore foot during camp, but apparently it's nothing that the team is concerned about. As you can see right here from Sports MD Analysis on Twitter, be sure to give him a follow. Foot soreness has limited practice participation. It's no indication of concern for week 1, and the comments seem positive. All the comments right now from Mike McDonald, the coach of the Seahawks, have basically just been like, this is a part of the plan. One day Kenneth Walker will sit out. The next day he'll be labeled a full participant. So with all this context, I'll take the guy who is still just 24 years old, by the way. Like, Kenneth Walker is so damn young because he came out as a younger running back. I'll take Kenneth Walker right now where he currently goes, assuming I have the right build, right? Kenneth Walker in the 4th round of fantasy drafts, a range of which, like, sure, if you need a wide receiver, Mike Evans makes some sense there, maybe a DJ Moore. But right now, Kenneth Walker, if you need a running back, he's the one who stands out a ton in round 4 of fantasy drafts. And these are the reasons why I like taking Kenneth Walker for more than his rushing yards this year. Because he has the pure talent as a rusher, an upgraded offensive line, and a coach who wants to use him a ton right now. All those things check the boxes for going more than your rushing yards. And since we're talking about making picks, I'm teaming up with DraftKings Pick 6 this year for week 1 to give you a shot at their biggest bag ever. Right now, all DraftKings Pick 6 customers can play for free for a shot at a cut of $1 million or more. Pick more or less on 6 player stats, share it with your crew because the more people that play, the bigger the bag grows, and if you hit all 6, you are in for a share of over $1 million. So if you want to play along, download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, sign up using my promo code SAL, and claim your free token today. Simply put, let's build this bag together. Now, the next player who I believe can shock the world this year is Jayden Reed. Now, let's talk about Jayden Reed because honestly, this guy is fascinating. Last year, when you look at it, nothing is too impressive. 75 targets, just 4.4 per game, only earned 16% of his team's targets to Packers. That ranks 60th in the NFL. None of this is all that great. On paper, it looks like absolutely nothing special, but then you actually look at what he turned that somewhat limited usage into. And that's where things start to get impressive. Again, the guy only had 75 targets and he was able to produce 857 yards on these targets. He had 7 touchdowns as well, 55 receptions. He was one of the most efficient receivers in football last year because Reed ranked top 15 in yards per route run, was top 3 in yards per target, and was the #1 player in the entire league in quarterback rating when targeted. Basically, whenever Jordan Love tried to get him the ball, good things happened. The Packers just didn't do it enough. Now, part of that was because of just Jordan Love not being out there, him being hurt, Malik Willis playing in some games, Jordan Love not being 100% himself, and then the other part was the Packers just didn't put him on the field enough. Like, if you look at Jayden Reed, this is his 2023 game logs from his rookie season. This dude came on down the stretch, 20 fantasy points, 17, 27, 15 to end his rookie season. There was a lot of hype for this guy coming into last year for good reason, and we actually saw that pay off right away. This was a guy last year who was going as like a 5th, 6th round fantasy pick. Now you can get him rounds later, but he's kind of the same player. Like, to start last year, Jayden Reed, before Jordan Love got hurt at the end of this week 1 game in Brazil against the Philadelphia Eagles, 138 yards and a touchdown in that game. 138 yards and a touchdown. Over his first 6 games of the season, by the way, these include games where Jordan Love missed 2 of them and Malik Willis was in and the team was running the ball so heavily. Jayden Reed still averaged 17.7 fantasy points per game, was a top 12 wide receiver during this time, averaging 74 yards per game. Again, 2 of those games, they only threw the ball like 10 to 15 times with Malik Willis. The issue is basically the fact that the whole offense got thrown off last year when we saw Jordan Love get hurt not only week 1, but then later on and a couple weeks later, he injured his groin and they leaned on the run a ton with Josh Jacobs. This led to a lot of more 2 wide receiver sets where you can see Jayden Reed only played 64% of the snaps. It was not him on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. It was Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks. Jayden Reed was on the field mostly as a slot wide receiver, and 3 wide receiver sets, ranked 73rd in snap share despite likely being the best wide receiver on this team last year. That is just crazy. Now we head into this year and Jayden Reed does indeed have more competition. There's no doubt about that. Because the Packers added 1st round pick Matthew Golden, who though he does win in different ways than Jayden Reed. Golden could be the outside receiver while Jayden Reed, it opens things up on the underneath. So I think they complement each other. Savion Williams they also added, who's been injured in camp but has gotten good reviews when healthy. People think that he could actually see more touches than Jayden Reed. Kind of a similar player in that regard. I don't know if I see it right now. I think Jayden Reed is just tiers above in terms of a prospect, and obviously what we've already seen in the NFL has been proven when Jayden Reed is healthy and Jordan Love is healthy. And maybe that's just the biggest thing here. If Jordan Love is healthy, the Packers probably throw way more than they did last year, just naturally speaking. Like, they didn't have to lean on the run with Malik Willis in those games and Josh Jacobs when Jordan Love couldn't drop back and pass as well. And when we saw a healthy Jordan Love in the 2023 season, despite a very rocky start to that season, you got 4,100 passing yards. You got him completing 64% of his passes for 32 touchdowns. The upside for Jayden Reed, if Jordan Love is healthy, is very good. Now, of course, Jayden Reed also has to be healthy because as of right now, we saw that he was in a walking boot. According to SportsMD analysis, Jayden Reed, average 4 to 5 week recovery. Data favors him playing week 1 with mild dip/moderate re-injury risk. So at worst, we're hoping that Jayden Reed can be healthy by week 2 if they want to keep him out week 1 to play it safe. That's probably the best case scenario for the rest of the year. But I really like these Packers wide receivers right now. You can get both of them in like rounds 9 or 10. So I prefer Matthew Golden, as you've seen in my other videos, and him being the one of the players that I want to bet on the most this year. Golden in like round 8 or 9, I love. Jayden Reed in like round 9 or 10, I also love. Specifically, Jayden Reed goes outside the top 100 picks right now as the 102nd overall pick as the wide receiver 46. I think there's a world where, assuming this foot injury isn't major and he's back by week 1 or week 2, that Jayden Reed and Matthew Golden can be the 2 top wide receivers for this Packers team with a healthy Jordan Love that could potentially rank top 10 in passing offense this year. That feels pretty good on the value you're getting on both of these guys at, I would say, a discount. So those are 5 players that I believe can shock the world this year and are going way too late in fantasy drafts, and they should be players that you star because you can get them in those later rounds. Now, we talked about some wide receivers in this video, like a Jayden Reed right there, and if you want to see the 7 wide receivers that I would bet my house on this year, I'm that confident in them, well, you can check out this video right here. This is the one. This is the one that if you want to know the 7 wide receivers who are basically the best, everything considered in fantasy, you'll want to watch this video before your league mates do.